There. So that sounds nice. The job. So you do your practicum on Wednesdays.
Yes, sometimes Mondays and Tuesdays, but always Wednesdays. Sometimes, yeah, it depends on.
Just FYI, we're live on YouTube now.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah.
On its way to you, and we don't need it for loading.
Bridget, whenever, are we ready?
We're ready? Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the October meeting of the Salem Library Advisory Board. This is a special meeting. This is going to focus on a board retreat to do some strategic planning for the board. So with that, I will turn it over to our facilitator and helper for this afternoon, Darcy. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
Yes, welcome everyone. I'm Darcy Hanning. I'm with the State Library of Oregon. I'm the public library consultant and continuing education coordinator. I've been there for about 18 years and I've been doing public library consulting for about 10. Wow, that's cool. Time flies. So just really quickly, I wanted to give you an overview of what we're going to do. It's very similar to what you see on the agenda. There'll be introductions and we'll go around and there'll be a small icebreaker. And then I'm gonna do a quick presentation. Some of you may have seen it before when Betsy came to talk about the roles and responsibilities of an advisory board, friends and foundations, and the director in the city, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then I'm gonna do a short little exercise with, you should all have one of these, so we'll do that really quick. And then we're gonna dive into the meat of the meeting, so to speak. That sounds weird now that I realize I'm vegan, why would I say that?
So what kind of meeting was?
Yeah, okay, right. It's the garden burger meat. And we'll get into looking at looking at the advisory roles and some of the things that advisory boards normally do and some of the needs that are in the public library strategic plan and see where those overlap and come up with some goals and maybe some objectives. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean about goals versus objectives. Might be a little bit different than what you do, and that's okay. We'll just use that working definition for this part of it. Okay?
And maybe before then, Kelly, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, this started a long time ago, or I feel like, back in the spring. And so it's great to have you here, Darcy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're doing it here.
And I also wanted to take this opportunity to formally thank Kelly for all of her efforts in putting this together. I believe this will be Kelly's last meeting. She unfortunately has had some scheduling conflicts that make this time difficult for her, but we have greatly appreciated her time on the library board and hope you will continue to be an advocate for the library in the future and not be a stranger. And if your schedule allows it to please consider to come back on the board.
So. Oh, of course. Yes, I didn't find a book in the library about how to replicate myself. I have looked for such things, but until then, yes, the plan is for now, and then
I think that's in the Maker series. That's in the Maker series read.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, with that, go ahead, Darcy.
Great. So what I'd like to do for our icebreaker, and do we have just the one board member remote, or do we have more?
There was somebody who logged in as Matt's phone, but I don't think that might be a person of the public.
Okay.
Nope, that's Matt.
Oh,
That's
I'm
Matt.
sorry, not Matt.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's
Matt.
okay.
There are two board members.
Okay, great, because I want to make sure we include everyone. So for the introductions, I would be very pleased if you could say at least your first name. And if you kind of know about how long you've been on the board, you don't have to be super specific. And then one, maybe 2 words, if you can't get it down to one, on why you decided to serve on the library advisory board. Okay. And I think we'll start with David and we'll go around and then we'll pick up the online folks.
Well, my name is David Levy. I'm the chair of the Salem Public Library Advisory Board. I have been on for 2 years now. 2.5 years. And you know, why am I on the library board? Is you want
1 or 2 words?
1 or 2 words? How about 4?
All right, because you're the chair. Sure, go ahead.
I believe in libraries.
Okay. Can I just put library supporter? Sure.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah,
Thank
no.
you.
Okay, my name is Dana Castano. I have been on the library advisory board for, I'm taking a guess, I think 8 months. I could be wrong. It doesn't feel like it's been very long, but time flies. And I'd say I joined Lab because my 2 words would be community involvement.
You beat me.
I'm Kara Filsinger. This was my second meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Meet your veteran.
yeah, yes, I've been here a long time. Library kid.
You guys are all.
I'm Valerie. I'm the vice chair. I've been on the board for 1.5 years, and I would say community involvement.
Great. My name's Cameron Pickworth. I've been with the board just 2 months, and I'm a literary lover.
You too.
Oh, Bridget Esqueda, city librarian. I'm part of the lab because 1, I'm the secretary, and 2, I love libraries and I love helping others, so that's why I'm here.
Yep, Kelly Rass. I think Dana and I started at the same time.
We did.
Yes.
So maybe 8 months.
Maybe. I'm going with her 8 months. And my kids.
And the 2 folks online?
Start with how about Clyde?
Hi, I'm Clyde Psyche. I apologize for not being there in person, but I'm fighting a really bad cold. And since this is my second meeting, I didn't think I'd make a good impression sharing my germs with you. It's not COVID. I tested yesterday morning, so that's good. And this is my second meeting. And I think the library is an essential community resource.
And now Matt.
My name is Matt Jobson. I have been on the board for, I think, a little more than a year and a couple months. And I joined the board because my family has utilized libraries everywhere we lived, and we thought that it would be a good idea to support Salem Library.
So what I heard you all share were library supporter, community involvement, library kid, community involvement, literary lover, my kids, essential resource, and library user and supporter. So that's great. This means you're all motivated to do your very best for the library as part of being on the advisory board. So I want to thank you as somebody from the state library, because that's a big deal. And so thanks for sharing those. All right, we wanted to go ahead and do that presentation. You got that, Bridget?
I do. I'm gonna share so online can just a couple of screens there. All right, so everybody should be seeing this one. Hold on, I lost my mouse. There it goes. Let me put it on presentation mode. There we go.
Yay. So some of you may have seen this before, but if this is your second meeting, I'm guessing you have not. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about the library advisory duties. Next slide, please. Yeah, you're going to have to do my fingers today.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend too much time on this other than to say there are two kinds of library boards in Oregon, advisory and governing. Governing boards act like the city, and they do all the HR, they do all the financing, they hire and fire the director. So they basically take place of that government unit because they created a tax supported district and they are their own little government. So that's those folks. We're not going to worry about them today. Next slide, please. This is you folks, right? So you only have the powers that are granted to you by your governing body, which in this case is the city. Depending on what the city says, you may assist with hiring the director, but you're typically not responsible for it. You help set library specific policies. The staff will work on those typically, bring them to the advisory board, get your feedback, and send those along their way to the city council typically to approve. You'll help with the budget. That's a great opportunity to ask questions of the staff when that budget comes by to make sure things make sense to you. You can help with the selection sites for library buildings if that comes up, set policies regarding donations and grants. I'm going to say you probably don't deal with contracts. And then also helping to set the overall strategic direction of the library. And then, of course, advocating on behalf of the library. And I should have put that like all in capital letters, that last one, because that's really one of the most important roles you can play as an advisory board member. Okay, next.
Yes. Question, Darcy? Yeah. Of the library boards in Oregon, what percentage are governing and what percentage are advisory?
That's
40 advisory or?
Yeah, we do have quite a few districts, and those are the ones that are typically going to have the governing boards. And then we just have a lot of city libraries. So I would say that, yeah, probably most of the majority of them are advisory boards. I don't know the exact number. We have 140 library systems in Oregon, 138, 140, something like that. Yeah, it's a lot to wrangle sometimes. Any other questions about the roles and responsibilities of advisory boards? Okay, great. Next.
Library advisory.
There we go. Specifically for your library, these are the Salem revised codes that have been like signed and dated, almost good things. So again, recommending to the council rules and policies, preparing and submitting the annual budget request via the library services manager, who then sends that to the city manager, accepting and designating the use of expenditures of any real or personal property funds that are funds that are donated to the library. And again, recommending to the council any future library sites or location of other library facilities. So those are specifically called out, and then those other ones are pretty generic. Go ahead, next slide. So then that means the city of Salem and the council and the city manager take care of everything else, right? So they're responsible for the hiring of the director, who then is responsible for the staff, but then all the HR stuff for staff goes through the city. All the fiscal administrative procedures related to running the library go through the city. And then all those other duties that we mentioned before that are pretty much the city's purview. Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
Rich, can you back one slide? So, okay, so we do have the authority to recommend policies and rules for the governance of the library. What does that mean? Does that mean we set policy for the library? I mean, how deep can we dive?
Right, so typically, and Bridget, please definitely speak up.
Mhm.
What I speak on is kind of what typically happens. Every library can be a little bit different. Typically, what will happen is either a new policy is going to be created by the library staff, and they would bring it to you folks for review. And so you might have questions or suggestions, right? And then it's really up to the staff at that point if they're going to take those into account. Oftentimes, the folks have great ideas or have questions for clarity, right? And sometimes you don't know all the ins and outs of running a library, so not every suggestion would be accepted, right? And then once the director feels that that's solid, she would take it to the city council. And they would approve it or not.
We usually don't.
No, not to the council.
City council does not approve our policies. I know there's a couple where it pretty much things where we have to enforce certain things, like code of conduct went through city council, our meeting room policy went through city council, and our strategic planning went into city council, because those affect the whole community as a whole and things that we need to enforce. So we felt like those needed that backing of the city council approval.
Okay, great. Can you name a couple other major policies that might come through the advisory board review or?
Not in my tenure here.
Okay.
And for the previous one, I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough.
So we wouldn't necessarily be approving policies or reviewing policies towards, how do I say this? The types of books that are on the shelf or anything related to that, other than a more general policy about rules and responsibilities within the library. Is that fair?
I would see it benefiting when it deals with like community, because you all serve a different ward. So if we wanted input regarding like what your thoughts are, how it affect community members, then we would come up with something, you know, like our meeting room policy, like that affects people who reserve it, or we would have you look it over and see what you think, and then we would give it to city council so then they could approve it. But as far as like internal procedure and policies, we wouldn't, because that just affects staff.
I guess that was one important point I wanted to make, because other library advisory boards, obviously, in Oregon and around the country, are struggling with that issue. So it's good to know that that's really outside of our purview. We don't necessarily look at that or discuss that.
The only thing I would recommend is that it's not a bad idea for advisory board members to be knowledgeable with those policies, right? So in case you end up just having a conversation and they know you're a board member, it's not a bad idea to know, you know, or at least point them to the website, the library website, and say, hey, you can find the collection development policy online, or you can go to the library and find out what the circulation and privacy, patron privacy policies are. So it's good to have some level of awareness, but you don't need to dive deep, as you said.
Yeah, but as you said, so if somebody stops us in Fred Meyer's and says, "Why is this book on the shelf?"
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Go talk to Bridget.
There's I think one of the ones that I get the most of is that everybody who self-publishes or has a book out really pushes to have that book in our shelves. But a lot of times it doesn't meet our collection development policy, and that's really hard for people to accept. So that's luckily the one that I struggle with the most with our community members. It's not, it's very rare where it's like, you know, something about the content of the book. It's just that people want to add their personal books.
Any other questions around that?
I have one.
Okay, go for it.
So, David and Bridget, how much in the weeds do we get as far as the annual budget request, or do we just do it at a really high level? And then the other thing is, how seriously is it taken by the city council and the mayor? Our recommendation.
I mean, advisory board can make recommendations, but I'm the one tasked to oversee, and I look at stats and trends of how we've previously spent certain line items. We have an overall budget. And each budget has an assigned number. So like, if we're struggling, like right now, we're struggling with having staff. So obviously I advocate for staffing for my boss, and hopefully they will add money for personnel. But currently the way things are going, it doesn't seem like we may get that money. And you guys can also advocate for more personnel, that type of requests.
Okay, to me, this is one of the big issues, especially after listening to Jim's presentation last week. It sounds like there was some one-time money that we're not going to get again this year, and that's going to be problematic. And just listening to how some other libraries are funded compared to the way we are, it's really for me a big issue. Well, for all of us, probably.
No, and just to add to what Bridget said, my sense is that obviously we don't get into the weeds necessarily. We defer to staff in terms of kind of what their funding needs are. However, I think both city leadership and city council listens to us because we're their voice from the public. So on a broad sense, we can let leadership and council know the importance and value of the library and why these funds are needed. Does that answer what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Anything else? All right. What's next? Yes, we've covered this, I think. Yeah. So many libraries have a friends group and a foundation. And those are two separate organizations. Friends are often a nonprofit, but not always. We kind of recommend it. And they tend to raise funds through membership fees. So you have to pay a fee to join the friends group. They manage book sales quite often for libraries. Some libraries have a bookstore that's open like 5 days a week or 3 days a week. Merchandise and branding at the library, so t-shirts, mugs, things like that. They generally provide those funds for library collections and programming. However, some libraries will also use that for staff development or staff retreat day. So again, it's up between the director to make the request and the friends to say yay or nay. May also be an important source of operational volunteers for the library. Friends can also advocate for the library as well and say, hey, if you've got some spare time, the library loves volunteers, even if it's just 2 hours a week, right? And they tend to be older organizations and foundations, and I'm trying to remember what that actually means. Typically, friends groups outlast foundations because foundations tend to be fairly specific in their time and focus. So speaking of which, they always have a 501(c) status because they do some serious fundraising, especially through grants and direct appeals and bequests. And they do this in order to fund buildings, renovations, and things like that, or other large projects, right? And then again, they're formed to help raise those funds, and then sometimes will dissolve or become inactive after that huge fundraising push has succeeded and they've got the building up and running, right? Okay. Any questions about Friends and Foundation?
Sorry, can you go back to the previous slide one more time? One thing I did want to remind the board of, and I'm glad our attorney is here for that, and that is that our role is to educate city council, educate leadership on a particular issue, particular funding issue. We can't take a position on if there was a bond measure on as an organization. Individually we can say whatever we want, but as a board, we cannot take a formal position either on a bond measure or anybody running for office one way or the other. Am I on good standing with that?
Your advisory to the council. Yes. You are the entity of the city of Salem as a board, so you can't take independent. council as to what their position should be, but once council officially adopts a position, that is the city of Salem's position.
So just
The Salem Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library are not organizations of the city of Salem, independent, supporting but independent.
So hypothetically, though, just to understand, hypothetically, if there was a bond measure on the ballot, could we formally take a position one way or the other?
Not as a bond. Nor can you represent that you're speaking on behalf of the board and advocating for the position.
But if the council's considering a bond referral,
You as a board vote. So one person, board acts based off of the majority of the board. So if you as a board want to send something to their saying, library advisory board feels that city council should advance a bond measure supporting whatever, discuss it, and you vote, you can send that information and to council, to the information report. You can authorize somebody to go there and give public comment, but again, it is just advisory to the council about that and why, and that is the library advisory board's position. But then it is the council's decision to determine whether or not they want to do so.
so just, David, I think if the bond was already on the ballot, that's out of bounds. If council is contemplating action, because.
And we've done that, we've said some stuff.
Excellent. You guys are
Totally like,
yeah.
getting you on track.
No, it's it's all important stuff. All the questions are on the table. So to David's point, here are ways that the library board, an advisory board can advocate, right? So you attend the city council meetings, and there's probably usually a representative that speaks for the board. You can volunteer at the library and have a better understanding how it works. Get involved if you have a budget committee. You may or may not have that in this.
We did. We had the revenue task force, but that's already over with.
Yeah. So all the different ways you can be involved as an advisory board member. Any questions or anything that's kind of missing that you would like, why isn't this up there?
I guess I don't want to get hung up on words here and get some time, but I mean, based on what our legal counsel has said, we really can't advocate, can educate, but we really can't.
So you can, yes, you can educate. Well, yes, let me back up a little bit. There's always the two hats, right? Because I'm a state employee, so I get the two hat thing, right? Yes. So as an individual, I can tell you, I think what you guys do is great and that you should have millions of dollars, yada, yada, right? As the state employee from the state library, I've got a different hat and I can stay within that lane, right? So it's the same kind of thing. But, there's nothing to say that you can still go to a public meeting and speak as an individual. Right? You can acknowledge that you're an advisory board member, but you are speaking as a private citizen, right? So you still have that right. Always do that. And it's not a bad thing to do because a lot of people hate doing it.
Which I've done before,
right?
Which I've done for city council, say that the library advisory board is not taking a position on this.
Exactly.
I'm not representing the library advisory board, but this is what my personal opinion.
Exactly. Okay.
All right, last one.
Yeah, well, I'm not Buzzy. I'm Darcy down below. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to have two sets of instructions for our next little exercise. One is going to be for the people that are in the room, and the other one's going to be for the people that are online. And Bridget's going to help me with the online folks when we get to that point. So you've got a library. Card.
Yeah, library card. No, I should have a library card. You see me after if you don't.
You have an index card. On one side, I want you to write the word challenge at the top.
Doesn't matter which side.
Does not matter. One side challenge. And the online folks, you can do this if you want, but you're gonna report to Bridget via chat. And she's gonna write index cards for you. We don't want to see their answers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. And then on the other side, you're gonna write success. Okay. So now I want you to think about what you think has been a good success of the board as a whole. Okay. And then on the challenge side, what has been a challenge, not about the money, because that we know that, right? So is there another challenge that you folks feel like the board has had to deal with? Okay. And it can be around advocating, right? Like, I don't know how to get the word out, or the board could do some improvement. We seem to be challenging in that area, or it could be something else completely different.
So tell me this, what is success again?
Success, anything that you think the board has done well.
As a board.
As a board, or yeah, as a board. And the online folks, if you could write the word, put in the word challenge and what you think the challenge is in chat. And then what you think the success has been, a success of the board has been, and put that in the chat. And Bridget will write those up on an index card for both of you. Yes.
For those of us that are newer and haven't like been part of the board for very long, do you have an alternative, like
it's good point,
wins or successes that we've seen in the library?
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. Or even if you want to put a personal challenge as being a new board member, or something you've seen that's been successful, that's helped you to be a board member, a new board member. On any of those, you take your time. There's no rush to this part. We should have.
Hey, Darcy,
Yes.
do you want us to put in the chat our feedback to Bridget?
Yes.
It says chat turned off by host.
Oh, can you turn that on?
I'll try. Let me see.
Yeah, if not, you might just have to do it verbally. We'll see how it goes. And we might take a short break because we're going to need some copies of things. Yes. Yeah, I don't know where. You don't have to copy that side. Gotcha. Thanks, Kelly. And then did you do it great?
Yep. Bridget, should I making copies of these?
Oh yeah.
Do you want me to go find somebody or?
No, that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Are they gonna be able to chat, or we can do it? They can do it verbally.
Participate, everyone. There you go.
Yay! Chat should be working.
Okay.
Okay. Raise your hand if you're done with your English.
Would have written in better handwriting. You were collecting them.
Yes, so if folks want to put their Matt and Clyde, if you want to put your challenge and your success in the chat, I will put them on index cards for you.
Sorry, were we just listening?
Yeah, just one, but if you're feeling, that's fine. It's all good. Thank you so much. I'm just waiting on you, Clyde, if you're, oh, he's up here.
What's that?
Are you able to put yours in the chat, Clyde?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I think I better give it to you verbally because
Okay, that's fine.
my typing is a little off today.
That's all right. No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want me to tell me what you think has been successful about the board?
Okay. It's really difficult. This is really difficult for me, only having attended one meeting.
Right.
But from what I see, everyone on the board is really a strong advocate for the library, and it's really good to see that. And I think we'll do good work.
Great. And then what do you think has been challenging either for the board or for yourself as a new board member?
Yeah, it's just getting up to speed, learning what the issues are, learning how the library works. I have some idea because I do volunteer on some days reshelving books. So I get to talk to some of the employees and see how work is done. And I'm not knowing what goes on behind the scenes. I'm really impressed.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm not going to mention names for anyone else, Clyde. Thank you for being brave.
Mm-hmm.
So, great. So I'm going to read the challenges first, and then I'll read the successes. Challenge is finding ways to gain more support for the library. Learning the history of the previous board, recommendations and actions to date. Board's interconnection to other city entities and how to be more involved. Another challenge are the time constraints, enough time in meetings, and the ability to attend additional meetings. Another challenge is getting the word out to community about what the board does. Thank you. Funding challenges, the funding challenge and not knowing the role. So learning about that. Knowing how to help support the library besides going to city meetings. Staff morale, library hours, and the relationship with friends and foundation boards. Okay, so do most of those resonate with folks? Any big surprises? Yes. I did get those, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So thank you. All right, so some successes. Great leadership and financial support within the board. The support for finances, I think, is what that's meaning. How did that get turned around? Funding advocacy and the relationship with the city council and leadership as a success, and relationship with friends and foundation. The board all respects each other and works well with others. That's important. That's great. New membership to, I think they're trying to say there's new new membership to start processing. So I think they're trying to absorb what the library is about and what the board is about. Learning a lot already as a success. The leadership uniting the work of the board and passionate about the work. And I definitely see, you know, when we went around and talked about why you support the library and the board, definitely show some passion there. The meeting directions and organization, and vote on additional library interns was listed as a success. So I think you folks are very well positioned to do well for the library, even the folks that are new. You're willing to dive right in. And I think your fellow board members are willing to help you with that. Sometimes what a board will do is they'll create a buddy system for like the first 3 or 4 meetings. That can help with new board members, right? All right, so any thoughts about what you heard around the challenges and successes?
Well, it's just reminded me that going around the room, I mean, Gretchen, I think Gretchen's been on, Bridget, 4 years. It's Gretchen.
I thought it was more than that. I thought she served 2 terms.
She said, maybe. So I'm on my first term. Everybody else here is on their first term. And so there really is, I mean, I think challenges, there's a learning curve, as we all figured out. But I will tell you in a positive sense, success is the amount of energy in this room. It's just contagious. I mean, it really, it really gets me excited about the things that we can do as a board. So anyway, it's just a couple things pointed as I was working.
Great. Anyone else with any thoughts about?
David, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there any kind of orientation for new board members?
Yeah, it's something we've talked about for a while. Try to put together, and I think we've kind of slowly put that together with materials that are online and other things that are out there. But Clyde, I can have that conversation with you offline.
Sure. That'd be great. I'd be happy to help.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll definitely pick your brain on that.
Okay.
On what that should look like. So if that's something you can help me with, that'd be great.
You bet.
Any other thoughts or questions? Anything surprising that you heard about the successes or challenges? Seem to jive pretty well with your perceptions. Okay, great. All right, so now we're going to get into the heart of it. That's a much better word, right? The meat of it. Yes, so you've got some pages that were handed out. So thank you, Bridget, for making those last-minute copies. You might want to take the stapling off or not. But the first 2 pages are the advisory board's work, the front and back. And then the second set of pages is the kind of the text that Kelly was kind enough to pull out last spring even, that's from the strategic plan. And the portions that you see highlighted are just some things where I saw some crossover, but they're not necessarily the only thing, because this is not my library and I'm not a board member. So you might spot things that I would not. And we can add things. Is there any chance we could email those?
If you have this digital, yeah, if you can send it to me, I can send it to Clyde and Matt.
Excellent. So please bear with me. Get this.
Bridget, just FYI, I think there's a bit of a delay on the video.
There is.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's the YouTube feed.
That is a YouTube feed, just so I can keep track of chat and who's coming.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, please take some time and review those so you can get a sense. On its way to you, Bridget, and I'll give, why don't we do this? I'm gonna give you all like 5 minutes at least. I'll check in 5 minutes and you all take some time, make some notes, write down questions. If you see something that's like, oh, we could also do this, or what does this mean in the strategic plan? And is there a way we can help with that? So take a look at both sets of documents and I'm going to give you at least 5 minutes, maybe 10, depending on what that.
Yes, and when these were established back in the spring, and was there a goal timeline established with any of them?
Let me provide a little more history. So this is a document that I put together, the advisory board's work, because these should kind of align with what we've talked about already, right? So, and what I did was I highlighted the ones that were either very board specific, but would help for like with succession planning, which has already been brought up, right? You're all new and you don't have a board handbook. What would that look like, right? So that is definitely something the board could choose to work on, right? For example. The second half is just the text version of the library strategic plan. So there's nothing new here. And Kelly pretty much pulled out the text, so it wasn't like in the graphical version, colorful graphical version that you like people to see. And again, I just highlighted some areas that potentially the board may choose to assist, advocate for, potentially fund, because you do have that money, right? So, and I'm not here to guide you in any particular direction. I am the throwing the spaghetti on the wall person, right? And then you folks get to decide if that spaghetti is done or needs to go back into the pot or it's burnt. And you never want to touch it again, right? We might do a bit of brainstorming. So which way would be good? Ask folks to turn like a bit over there so people, someone could see it. You think that would be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, all of that, get out those slides.
I think that pretty much pick up over here to get.
Yeah, I moved the table and.
So I guess we don't have any.
It has to connect to my laptop and then my laptop has to connect to that. This is
Oh, I
probably
see.
for that.
I was
Yeah.
thinking if she stood in this space,
Yeah.
they'd be able to see her in the online. Or post it,
Gotcha.
won't have to worry about
I could also zoom in just on her over there.
Yay.
Yeah.
I don't mind. Until I see myself up there.
But don't feel like you little. Ethics. Okay, good. Special exception. Right, we're doing it to make them feel, but that's great. You're right.
Whoever brought the LaCroix, thank you.
Welcome. All of them
Are done or just actively looking?
working on them. Okay. Yeah, we have committees, designated for each, and they work on it.
Some part of it. Okay, great. Cool.
Yes. Together this board.
Yes. Yeah. Which will be part of our. Yes, it most definitely will be. Yes. How many folks could use another 3 to 5 minutes? Sure. Online, how are you doing? Do you use another 3 to 5 minutes to make notes?
Sorry, David. David and Dana.
I'm eating, that's all right.
Yeah, look at your puppet show. Are you Gretchen by chance?
I am Rachel Darcy.
Oh, sorry. Oh my
That's okay. In real life, we're always in Zoom.
Nobody gets the way I think they want in real life.
Put me in a square.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So what we're gonna do, I think, is I want to know if there was anything in the strategic plan that was not highlighted that you thought the board could support in some way. So if you have something extra.
That's a very dumb
Yeah,
question.
no, please do.
So we're looking at the library strategic plan.
Yes.
But our board has never had one, is
Right.
my understanding? Okay, so we're creating from
No, fair.
nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
that's understanding.
Right, and advisory boards don't always have a strategic plan.
Okay.
All right, because their roles and responsibilities are fairly well defined.
Sure.
So it's more just kind of, maybe every few months, you realize that something's come up as a board, you realize and you make a motion, you vote and you go forth and you do the thing.
Sure.
Right? But that is not to say you should not have a plan, certainly, right? So what we're gonna do, and because typically advisory boards don't necessarily have a strategic plan, and your library does, what we want to do is kind of find that overlap of what an advisory board member does typically and what the plans are of the library. Having said that, that does not mean it is also possible for the board to come up with goals just that are about the board. Okay. So again, that example of a board member handbook, right? Sure. Would be a potential goal for the board to create, or to establish a buddy system, right? You don't have to start with a big whole handbook. And maybe the goal is the first year, you just come up with the outline of what the board handbook should have, right? So don't go running from the room because it sounds really big and huge and oh my gosh. They can be small goals. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So did that approach make sense to folks? We're going to kind of look for those overlaps. And I did some work, like I said, last spring. That's why things are highlighted in yellow. However, like I said, you're the folks that work with your library. So out of those items that I did highlight, was there anything that you would like to see from the strategic plan document that wasn't highlighted that you thought the board could help with?
I would have an improved community of I guess I should say just a little bit of everything from position the library to sustainably serve our community in two ways. One is the advisory board work of being familiar with and assisting the library in communicating around resources, services, and public image, as well as advocating for adequate resources. I see both of those present in that those three different points in that one goal.
Yep.
Additionally, we do have financial resources that we lend to the library on occasion. Well, not lend, I guess, give to the library on occasion. Yes.
So we are going to talk about that before we finish up today. I'm well aware of the money you have, and I think most of you are aware that that's unusual for an advisory board to have money. And best advice the state library would like to share with you is get rid of the money in a thoughtful way, thoughtful and intentional.
And then the other part is continually evolve services to increase accessibility, which ties into the same thing, just us being familiar with the services of the library and making sure that the public is as well.
What's been shared so far is making sure you're communicating about the library and advocating, right? Under that first goal of position the library to sustainably serve our community, and support is definitely part of the sustainability. So that makes complete sense. And then under, and then under continually evolve services to increase accessibility, it's on the second page. Being familiar with the library services. Right? And that could also go for programs, right? So if the library is launching a whole new series of senior programs and you have seniors in your life, you should be talking about that, right? And one thing that I like to do when I work with libraries creating a strategic plan, one of the reasons that it's so valuable to have a library strategic plan is that it's a great communication tool in and of itself, right? And the way I frame that is every board member, every staff, maybe even your volunteers, your friends group potentially, should know of a recent success of the library and should know what else the library needs. So that at any moment someone asks you, hey, how's it going at the Salem Public Library? It's going great. We just started a senior program to help with digital equity, which means everyone has easy access to the internet and the resources they need online. And that's going really well. And what we're finding is we need funding for additional accessibility equipment at our senior stations. Do you know somebody who could help with that? That's the way the board can advocate. That's the way anybody can advocate for the library, right? So maybe in your board meetings, you might ask staff to share a recent success and a recent need, right? Or maybe quarterly. Don't go crazy, right? I'm not trying to make more work for the staff. But you need to know what's going on so that you can advocate. And if you can give real life examples, right?
The Teen Advisory Board does that. They come every month and they tell us all their successes for the month. Yeah.
And we share the state library report every month.
Right.
That has.
Yeah. Great. Perfect. Okay. Anything else on the strategic plan that wasn't highlighted? And I don't know if Clyde and Matt, if you can see it, but I did read it. Would you like me to read one more time what was added?
I can see it.
Okay. And Clyde, are you good? Okay.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. Perfect. All right.
Just going back to the strategic plan. So talking about cultivating connections within our community, and maximizing the effectiveness of the library's partnerships. You know, I really think that's something that we should take a look at. Because I think oftentimes we run into, and maybe it's because I've been on the board for a bit, but we run into an issue of kind of what is our role? What is the Friends' role? What is the Foundation's role? What is the role of other stakeholders for the library? And it would be nice for us to be able to give a quick elevator speech to define what our role is versus the Friends and the Foundation, for example.
So that last slide where they had the little groups of things, advocating, communicating, right? I would say those are your top two. That should just be rolling off your tongue, right? And Friends also advocate that they raise funds, right? So again, another role for you to play is, well, the Friends group is having a huge book sale. You should tell 10 friends and you should tell them to tell 10 friends, right? Right. So all of these ways that you can insert yourself into that communication channel.
So we have the bully pulpit to help both the Friends and the Foundations with some of their activities using the resources that we have.
Always. So so instead of putting this with the strategic plan goal, because I think the developing and maximizing partnerships really resides pretty strongly in the library realm. However, your partnerships are the Friends and Foundation. Okay, so you can maximize those. And it's not uncommon. Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, I just have a question. Again, as a newer board member, how involved are we in that stuff? Like, do we always have a representative who's chosen to go to every event? If if they're doing a fundraiser, is somebody from the board there? How do we choose those things, or how have we?
We haven't gotten that far down in the weeds. I mean, we have a representative that serves on the Foundation board. We're looking for somebody to serve on the or be a part of the Friends board. They come to our meetings, and that's something that we're continuing to kind of to work on. That's why at our monthly meetings we give them an opportunity to talk about events that they're doing, and I strongly encourage all of our board members to get involved in whatever level of comfort they have with either the Friends or the Foundation.
So I'm going to put your partnerships. And I'm just going to F and F. I'll be writing all night. Okay. All right, great. So I think we've beaten to death the whole strategic plan approach. Was there anything in the advisory board's worksheet that most of it's highlighted? So I think what I did when I worked on this was I tried to match it up with things that were already in the strategic plan in some way, or that the board could create goals around independent of the strategic plan, the library strategic plan. Just because it's not highlighted, again, this is my opinion. You folks have the final decision. Okay. Is there something that wasn't highlighted that you feel really strongly about? Or had a question about?
Well, I guess I'll throw this out. You know, the elephant in the room, Clyde already mentioned, and that is the significant funding challenges that the library has, short-term and long-term. But at the same time, and that's why I think it's important to have this discussion at the strategic planning meeting, that some of that is outside of our control. We don't, you know, we're not a taxing authority. We can't raise money. You know, we can only do so much within our limitations. And as Matt pointed out, we have some resources available to us that we can utilize, you know, maybe in different ways, and we can talk about that at a future meeting. But you know, there are certain things outside of our control in that process, and there are other things as identified that we can work on. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, we can focus all of our efforts in the next 12 months on trying to figure out how to deal with the challenges of funding the library, and that would just kind of suck us dry. But that's also very important. So I don't know, in having this conversation, that's why it was really important to me to have this strategic plan to kind of talk through some of those issues. And I know for your new board members, you're drinking from the fire hose on this. So any perspectives you have are very helpful in this process. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out.
Yeah, no, excellent. Let me just actually to David's point, let's just do like a straw person poll, right? Just this is not binding in any way, just to kind of get the feelings, and it may change by the end of the conversation. Okay. So if you had to rate the importance, let's do it this way. 1 means the board does nothing around the funding issue for the library. I'm not talking about the funds you have, but the funding issue of the library. And 10 means you do nothing but that for the next 12 months. Think about where you would like to see the board's efforts, right? So just take your time and think about that. 1 is doing nothing. 10 is doing everything you know for 12 months, and that's kind of consumes you, like David said. And there's no wrong answers here. This is all just gauging your level of interest and commitment. And so there's no bad answers. Because honestly, 1 is a perfectly, or 2 is a perfectly good answer, right? Because you need to think about the board's sustainability and longevity. You don't want to burn out. 8's a good answer if you decide that, hey, we're just going to do that for a year. Who would like to share their number?
Do you want us to just briefly say what?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, recognizing this is my last meeting, 10 my thought is 7 because it's in our role to advocate for adequate resources, and it's the sustainability plan. It's in the strategic plan. And for me, there's an importance in focusing on it because I think there was a lot of energy, and then I don't know where that energy goes. And there's something about creating intentionality within a 12-month frame for this group that seems important to me when we don't have as many people standing out on commercial. You know, I don't know where that energy comes from, but I'd sure like to know that there's some sustained, thoughtful, targeted voice that's speaking into the city. So
great.
That was not brief, but
it's good conversation to have. Who else?
I was thinking 5, and my reasoning for that was because we are limited in what we can do as an advisory board when it comes to advocating. It's not saying that it's because we don't want to, but because there are actual limitations. So there's also other functions that we serve, but at the same time, if we don't have adequate funding, then we can't do our other functions. So it's kind of like chicken before the chicken and the egg situation. So 5.
Thank you.
So,
oh, yes.
Sorry, it's hard when you're online to see the room. So I think it's a 7 or 8, but I also think that it's really important, and how we allocate our time to this issue. And for instance, for me, one important aspect of this is community education. I mean, we heard some statistics last week that surprised me. Something like, if I remember right, we're the 33rd level of funding for major libraries in the state. I mean, yeah, it just was kind of shocking to me. And I think educating the community needs to be one of the things we look at.
Thanks, Clyde. Who else would like to share?
Can I cheat a little bit and ask Bridget, if you got to pick how we spent our time, where would you put us?
Right now, I believe advocacy and education are number one. I think that not a lot of people know about everything that we offer. And because of that, of course, they're willing to be like, well, yeah, cut the library, we don't use it.
Yeah.
But if they actually saw everything that we have and all the barriers, we try to bridge gaps, and all the people that actually need the library, not because of entertainment, but because they need access to the resources we have. I mean, they would see what a vital community resource we are. We just went to Viva Salem. We had around 80 people to do a little short survey. And one of the major barriers that prevent them from coming is our hours. And we know that. We know that the hours are a barrier because we're only open 40 hours, 38 hours a week, 10 to 6, which is the majority of people's work week. So we wish we could be open every day. But I know that, we're working within our limitation. So for me, advocacy, anytime I get invited or I have an opportunity to go present and talk about the library, I'm there, because everything that I can share is just letting people more know about the services we do. And I think that's one thing that we struggle with, because we keep going to the same places and talking to the same people, but they're already here. We need to go to the people that, I mean, currently we only have 34,000 active card holders, which means that they've used their library card within the last 6 to 8 months. But we've registered over, I think it's like 90,000, but only 34,000 actually use their card and come here consistently to check out, either online or in person. So to me, like, if City of Salem is 180,000, we're missing that much of more people. So to me, it's education and advocacy for sure.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is that what you're kind of getting to?
10 being the most, I would say 100. The most for me is just letting people know everything that we offer.
So just to clarify, I don't need to put you on the spot, but to clarify that in terms of the financial challenges dealing with the library, 0 being no role for the advisory board, 10 being total role of the advisory board.
I mean, that's all they work on.
Yes, yeah, so I understand advocacy on a broader sense, but in terms of that piece, where would you see the role of the advisory?
I mean, right now in the situation that we're in, I do see that as being the number one, because without a library, there is no board.
Okay. Anyone else want to share their number before they were influenced by ours?
Oh no! I mean, I know that our city council and everybody, like, they're really trying, and I know what situation we're in, and I totally understand that. But I need to also look out for the people that we serve and the people that are here every day, putting on the effort and the work and the passion to get that service. So.
I was also thinking, Evan, we love our library and we love the staff and we want them to know we support them. And of course we do. But like you said, the chicken and the egg, we need to fund other things to get people educated in the library, so that they come and so that they use those resources. And it's, one of those, you can't have one without the other. And so I don't know how to better help. And that's what I wrote on our challenge. I'm like, besides
we'll get there.
You know, talking at the meetings and sending letters of support, like what else can we do?
We can brainstorm on things.
Okay.
I think, yeah, let's not go there just yet. Okay, so you said 7?
I did.
Yes, and it said, who else hasn't shared? Did you share your number?
Yeah. Well,
Mine was also 7 before, but I wanted to, because I'm new.
No, that's great. Did you share?
No.
Would you?
My number's evolving. I was at a 5. And the reason being not that I don't support the budget, but I think that there's work we need to do to encourage the support that's required. And we're also in a time where the council's changing over, the mayor's changing over. We don't have the results of this survey the council's doing.
21st, everybody.
Which I think will be incredibly informative to this group about whether or not we should spin our wheels in the face of public. I mean, if public support is not there, then we have a lot of work to do to get the public support there, which is sharing what you're doing and all the good work and all those sorts of things. So that's why I was at 5. So there's a lot of competing.
Yes, competing priorities.
So that's not that I don't support getting more money for the library, but also know that the appetite in town is just and in a weird space. And so that's, I also think, I don't know, a toolkit for board members. You have a social media account that you guys share good things you're doing, and trying, sort of some ideas about, if you do social media, here's some things you can share with your groups, or if you're in other community. Like, I know a board member on the Kaiser Library board. So, there's other ways to connect with people, and I know people on the funding, so that's
great. Did you say your number right?
Yeah. 7.
Who has it said there? Matt and David. Matt, would you like to share your number with us and a little bit about why?
Yeah, I think my number is probably around 5. I think that I don't know how much influence we have actually with the board, and this is a volunteer position, and I think that if we had more I don't know, more oomph behind what we do. I have found it to be a little bit frustrating over the last few months, seeing how the library is lacking in funds, and the kind of lack of vision on how the city wants to fund the library has been kind of disheartening for me. So
fair. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. I think you're the last one, David.
Yeah. Boy, all good answers. I guess I would lean probably 6.5. Because I think about 2/3 of our time in the next 12 months should be really focused on dealing short-term and long-term with the funding challenges of the library. And that, all that, in terms of some of the advocacy ideas we've heard from previous presenters to us, to working with our federal and state partners, to other activities around that. That said, there is still activities that we need to accomplish. I think the idea of doing a kind of a welcome to the Salem Library Advisory Board manual, just understanding what the roles and responsibilities are, so we can have some history for us, in terms of separate from funding issues, some targeting efforts that we can do to different groups and activities that we're involved in, just as Bridget talked about, just to advocate and educate about what the library is, that we can help them kind of be a voice in places they don't historically go. So I still think that's a role that, we need to keep set aside 1/3 of our time to kind of work on some of those issues. But I do recognize that dealing with the short-term and long-term funding challenges of the library are critical to all of us, to all of the stakeholder groups that raise money off the library. And so, you know, that's all has to be our focus to try to get that problem solved.
Great. So the average comes out to 6.5. Just another data point. I didn't count Bridget's, but thank you for sharing. I think it's important to hear from you on that. So I'm gonna say that you folks probably kind of along the lines of what David was saying is that I would recommend establishing 1 or 2 goals for the next 12 months. Because more than that, you're probably not gonna make good headway. Beyond that, you'll feel disappointed at the end of the year, and that's not a good thing. So 1 or 2 goals. I think the educating and advocacy is probably your top goal, finding ways to do that. And there are some things I will follow up with David and email you some information. One of the things the state library does is we pay for access to United, I'm gonna get it wrong. United for Libraries.
You know, we libraries are United for Libraries.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's some training materials online that you have free access to. We pay for that. So there's that. I am more than willing to come back to your next meeting and share some ideas on how you can start doing that. One of the things I will say is that if you're feeling like you're not sure where that support comes from and why it comes and goes in waves, that's just kind of human nature. And you know, we've got, I mean, yeah, so it's human nature. And that there are things you can borrow from other organizing entities. So kitchen talks, kitchen table talks, get people together, have some food and talk about what you know about the library and why it's so important. If each one of you did that like 3 times over a year, and you had 5 to 6 people, and then you encourage them to do the same thing. You see what you want? It's gonna be like almost like a multi-level thing, right? You gotta get your folks. You've got to get additional champions with you. You can't do this alone. So you want to think of ways that you're comfortable creating advocates that are going to be strong enough to go out and do what you just did, and keep it simple, right? Let's just get together and talk about why the library is important to the community. Bridget will give you numbers, right? Not a lot of numbers, your own personal story about why that's why we talked about why are you serving on the library board? Share that. Who do you know that's really benefited from the library? They got a job because they were able to write their resume, right? They got a job because they could apply online. They got their social security going because they could come to the library and apply, right? All that stuff that's moving online, that is really important. Because even in a city that's as well connected to the internet as it is, people do not necessarily have internet, right? This is okay, but do you want to make your resume on this? I wouldn't, and I love my iPhone. So, you know, right? So I would say the advocacy and education piece is probably your #1 goal. Do you feel like you want to take on a second goal? Beyond that one? Because I'm not here to tell you one way or the other.
I felt like I heard there was some energy for board orientation.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree. I heard that too. Okay.
I'd be happy to help with that too, being new. Having done that in a professional capacity.
Okay.
30 years.
And I got confused around that. Not, hopefully by the end of the month, we will have a new handbook for board members. Right? I'm supposed to be last week, but I am completely swamped, so I'm a little behind. But we do have the final draft written. I just need to get it reviewed and uploaded. If you want to see a preview copy and not share it around, I'd be happy to send it to Bridget and David, and you can take a look at it. Yeah, the formatting might be a bit off and stuff, but it'll give you some good ideas. And then I can also send you, I think, Seaside maybe? Tillamook did something similar about 2 years ago. I could send you what they put together. It might just be an outline. But again, maybe an outline is all you need, right? And then I will get you those resources. So I want to spend I want to check in with Matt and Clyde, thank you. I almost said Clive. I'm like, that's not quite right. Do you folks feel okay with having 2 goals?
Yeah, I don't think we should have any more than that, or we're not going to get anything done. We need to focus.
And oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I don't think, I'm not really concerned with how many goals we have so much as laying out a time frame on like how we would meet the goals. Like if we're going to set 2 or 3 goals, then obviously we'd have to we only meet once a month minus 2 months a year. So that gives us 10 months to work on annually to work on a goal. So laying out a plan on how we would divvy up time and work on those objectives, I think is really, so I don't really care how many goals we have so much as whether or not we have time to meet all of our goals.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Excellent, thank you.
Can I throw out one more goal? And that is, I'll call it future planning, and just stuff happens. Looking at the stuff that the board has been involved in over the years, the board has been, for folks who've been involved in Salem for a while, used to be, for example, here at the library, they charge for parking in the lot, and that was very controversial. And the advisory board took a very strong position on that and helped to advocate with city leadership and council to get that removed. That was a very big deal.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, it was a very big deal. And then this building was under a major remodel. Took a lot of time and effort. The advisory board was heavily involved in that. So projects kind of come to us. And I'm not, I'm just, it may be that, and I think 2 is enough for us, but I also want folks to be aware that stuff does come up on occasion that we need to be able to be flexible enough to deal with it.
It's like the 10% other duties as a
yes,
time.
Which
everyone has in their
yes.
I think that goes back to timing, David. Realizing that we have we have other things that may pop up on our radar, so allotting time to deal with those in addition to our goals. And I also think that if we do set goals for the board, we should follow some sort of guideline like SMART goals or something like that.
Well, Matt, you and I would get along great. That's all about timelines, deadlines, and all the rest. But let me talk about this real quick, and we'll see how far we get. And if we'll just see how far we get. So if the goal is around, do this one real quick. Educating and advocacy. And those 2 are closely aligned enough that I don't, okay, so when I talk about goals, or let me put it this way, this is a focus area, probably better. So a goal could be that you're going to do certain kinds of education or certain kinds of advocacy in certain ways. So let's just, for example, let's do the kitchen table thing, right? Or kitchen talks, or whatever you want to call them. So, or maybe we'll even just say informal, right? And the important item here, believe it or not, is the food aspect, right? And the storytelling, right? So if this is one goal, how do you know you're getting somewhere on this goal? I call it objectives, and objectives are the what, for whom, by when, and how much, for example. So an objective might be that each board member has 2 kitchen talks in a year. I'm just making this up. It's not a recommendation, okay? In a year, okay? And 2 of those attendees, you follow up and find out that they've had 2 kitchen talks, okay? That's an objective, because you spelled out exactly what you're gonna do, and you're gonna do it in a year, or maybe it's 6 months, whatever that timeline is.
So these would be like outreach activities.
Yes, okay? So you could develop a number of outreach activities, and it might be that you come up with 3 or 4 different ones and board members pick 2. Okay, I don't want you to feel like if, inviting people over or meeting at a restaurant and eating and talking about libraries is not your gig, that's okay. You can brainstorm other things you can do. Matt, does that meet your kind of clear objective and timeline need?
Yes, that meets all of the objectives of a SMART goal, I think.
Excellent. Okay. So I want to spend just a few minutes. What else could you think of if maybe you've got experience in doing some advocacy work? What else might be an activity the board members could do?
Can we step back?
Sure.
People.
Yes, of course, please.
The elevator speech.
Yes.
We need an elevator. And not like super detailed, but like that high point. Because there's no point in, yeah.
I'm gonna drive outside my employer.
Yes. Oh no.
Just kidding.
Because I also have access to a lot of other boards in the city. So when one of the things that the city does, I think it fits into this perfectly, because you guys get a lot of information, and each of your board members from the team advisory group, the library chair report, everything. They have what they call talking points.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that the information that you're looking for is that you walk away from meetings with talking points that you're going to be focusing on that meeting next week.
That would help. And I mean, your reports that you have, the outreach efforts you've done and the success stories that are included, those are so helpful to me because I absolutely don't know that.
And let me tell you too, that, make your own little one sheet to hand out, right? And yours might look different than yours, that might look different from yours or David's, right? Because again, what's going to have the most impact is your personal story, your passion about it, right? So not just the stories that Bridget shares, which are invaluable, but also why, again, I serve on the board because the library provides a huge community service. And I believe in it so much, I volunteer every month and I do extra things, right? So, share your story about the library as well as the stories you get from Bridget, okay? And yeah, so the elevator speech, the talking points, that's something you all could work on. Do you ever have like committees that meet outside? Okay, so that might be something to think about.
See goal number 2, the board orientation, I think is perfect for that. Mark, how many people can we have meet legally outside?
Without it being a public meeting?
Yeah, without it being a public.
So it's
one less than quorum.
Applies to board members. So
right.
If
but if we have a board group getting together to create this board orientation or handbook, like can we have the board of us or
so less than quorum.
Less, yeah.
But that includes if you're going to be sharing it with other board members for their feedback, then we get into that whole non-public forum. So if you want to have subcommittee where a work group that's just going to be, hey, go off you 3, do the work, and then come back to us and report your work, that's fine. But that report back to us and the discussion about your work needs to be in a public setting.
Right.
You can't discuss that with the other member by email, get their feedback, etc.
But the 3 members can meet.
Yes.
Actually, what's our current number of appeal cases?
Right now we have 9, but Kelly is leaving, so we're gonna have 8 with 1 vacant.
Okay, so I would do it at 3 or less.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Can I also ask, under the educating and advocacy, is that an appropriate spot where if we can use some of our money to help the library do outreach or the bookmobiles or whatever they need, does that fit into that category? Or are you looking just for board members individually?
Yeah, that's a really good question because we didn't quite get to the money piece, and I do want to have a conversation at some point or have you guys have that conversation. My best recommendation is to work with Bridget, and maybe Bridget can guide that conversation or make recommendations to the board.
Yeah.
From the library strategic plan, which I think is, yeah. I think that's, I don't know, does that make sense to you if there's funding?
Yeah, so we do have outside sources like Foundation and the Salem Kaiser Women's Alliance that help with our outreach and read. And we also do the Ready to Read grant from the state. So we have our early literacy and outreach efforts covered.
Okay.
So we wouldn't need any help for that, but I'm happy to let you guys know what we do need help with.
Absolutely.
But you also have capacity issues. So even if we were to write you a check.
Right, without, without running out ragged, yeah.
So 2 things then, and again, this is me from the outside, so if I'm off base, I'm off base. I don't have a problem. The things I highlighted were also things I thought could be funded, honestly. So, because, and this is my perspective from the state library. So for example, under Centering Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, anything you can do to help the library with that is huge. That's a fantastic goal. And also I would say anything around digital equity, if that's part of their evolved services, and I don't know if that's something that's in their minds or not. But those are the kinds of things that we see almost every library needing help with anyways right now, given where we are in the political and social realm of things. So,
do you have
I can stay.
Talk a little bit about your perspective of what to do with our money.
So I don't want to step on toes. So yeah, so I think a lot that can be done is well, yeah, so I actually said there were 2 things. So 2 things. The first thing was what I thought the library could what you could help the library with, well, priorities that I see kind of across the state. The second thing is it may be possible to use some of that funding for contract work or what you would call consulting work. So you could bring in professional level library, even if they don't have the, you know what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. To lead a project or to, you know, like the state library did not write the new board handbook. We hired it out because I just don't have the time. I don't even have the time to review the darn thing. So, right. So if there are like special projects, so maybe part of the funding is a project plus a person for 6 months or 9, whatever that could look like. I don't know because I don't know everything you're thinking of the stuff that you know the staff is doing. So that will eat up money pretty quickly. But the nice thing about contracting is it's not a staff, it's not an FTE, and it's not long term. Okay, so it's more of those short term things. And I don't know if you've done that before, if that's something you'd be open to.
They're actually doing that right now. They're actually going to fund 2 college interns to come in for 300 hours. So that's a huge help that's going to add to our capacity. So they're already doing those. And they funded some of our high school interns. We had a high school internship over the summer that the lab funded. So which really was extremely helpful. They went on outreach visits. They went on they helped just with, you know, library tasks. So that was incredibly helpful and useful to us. So excellent. Yeah. And that's like a short-term kind of position.
Exactly. The other thing that doesn't take more staff is staff training. It takes time, but there's a trade-off there. But I think training around equity, all the DEI stuff is important, and doing it, you know, with Rachel and finding the ways that makes sense for the staff that are here. So that's what I would recommend around funding in the near term. I don't know if there are any constraints, but for example, if you need supplies when you start doing your outreach, use that money there. Don't use, you know, I would, you know, so for copies and things like that. I mean, yeah, if you're just educating and advocating, not promoting a certain ballot vote, right? Don't stay away from all of that talk, right?
So one broader question that we can have, and we can say this for November, is we have about $190,000. And, you know, we have spent it as needed over the years, and it's gone down. We've funded many different projects over the years. But there's a broader question about, should we have any money? And at all? Should we just spend it? And, you know, because it's raining here in Salem, and the library needs help. And one of the discussion, and we can say this for November, but one of the discussion points that I'm having with friends and foundation is through the offices of the city manager's office, is that we put together a private funded effort to support the library. So that when we go to the public in whatever forum, we can say that we've made an investment. And so we've talked to the foundation about doing that. We've talked to friends about doing that. Talked to other groups about doing that. Maybe we can, as part of that, help the library by creating this separate fund within the library's budget, a Salem public or private funding campaign that would be dedicated to the library to use for some of their staffing and operational needs. So I know that's a lot to swallow. There are a lot of questions. And so we're still having those discussions. But you know, if the goal is we want to look at spending down this money, that could be another way that we could do that, to kind of put a little bit of our skin in the game with those dollars to help Virginia and her team, as well as the city as a whole, with some of those funding challenges that they have.
Is there anything in writing saying what we can or cannot do with that money, whether or not we can add to it, where we can allocate it, things like that?
We developed some guidelines, and I can look into it. We have some flexibility on what we can use it for. Obviously, we can't, use it to fly us all to Tahiti for the weekend.
But you can send me, right?
We can send them. But the focus is to benefit the library. So it has to be something that is supported by library staff, that has been signed off on by library staff, that they've kind of identified that there is a need that meets the strategic plan of the library. There are certain current criteria that we've developed that can help with that. But beyond that, we have some flexibility on how we can use. Obviously, we can't use it for political activities or lobbying or anything like that, but because this is city funds. But that said, we have some flexibility to fund those things that benefit the library. Is that as clear as mud, Matt?
Kind of. Are we allowed to grow the money? I know that we can't take any more donations, but are we allowed to, could we put it into something like a perpetuity or something like that?
That would be something for legal. That's a very good question. I mean, one idea I had thought of when I first started was just taking all that money, maybe possibly, and giving it to the foundation and have them manage it for us. But that's a question for legal, I think. You can't do it?
No, that's city entity.
Okay. So it has to be, okay. Okay. So.
And we can't pay for staff, correct, with it? We can't.
I don't think we can't.
Well,
and that's why I
remember being told that we can't pay for a salary, but maybe I'm way off.
But you can hire contract. I mean, you
right.
Contract staff.
Right.
So.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you know of any other public library that has a foundation or board that has a separate money to help staff?
Typically, it's within the Friends, right? And I usually recommend training for staff because that makes it pretty clear cut. Or a retreat day, right, to help pay for presenters to come in for an in-service day, for example.
But it's not like salaried employee, yeah? Because I think there's a stipulation in the legal definition of a public library is that in order to be recognized as a public library, the funds for staffing and operations has to be paid for through city funds.
Half of it,
Maybe that's
yeah,
what I was
that's
thinking.
probably,
Yeah.
50%, yeah, so you're thinking of the minimum conditions, yeah. Yeah, so 50% for your size library, the library's operating total budget has to be publicly funded. But it's city funds, so I don't know where that would. Yeah.
I'm not able to give that answer.
No, that's fine. And if we have questions, like some of us newer members, if we have questions about staffing or like what you guys currently do, you know, do you have the infrastructure to bring in contractors and things like that? Who should we just email you outside of these meetings? Should we bring those questions to the next meeting?
I would say you can email me those questions and I'll try to respond. Because you're a city entity, I don't know if we would have to then be contracted for those certain contractors because they're city funds. I know we have to have a contract for the contractors.
Yes, exactly.
So that's why we like the city uses Moss Adams all the time because we have a 5-year contract with Moss Adams. So we would have to work within the constraints of have available. Yeah. Which we have a large list because we can share it through the whole city. So I can see who's available, who would meet that need.
Yeah, so back to the what do other libraries have? There is no other advisory board in Oregon that has this pot of funds through a city, right? And districts have their entire budget from taxes.
Yes.
So you folks are in a pretty unique position, which is why I'm being very careful about what I recommend because you're the only ones I make these recommendations to. And then Bridget can help, and it sounds like you're working with the city to come up with some avenues. So I'm just surprised that the city hasn't said get rid of this money because it's a weird thing for the city to be holding on to as well long term. So anyways, I know every city
you should see your other trust and agency fund.
Yeah. So I think for your next board meeting, what you will want to do is start fleshing out your goals, right? You've got some pretty, and I will get you some resources to help you come up with activities, right? So basically your 2 focus areas are the education and advocacy and the board orientation. Those are the 2. You want to come up with objectives. So maybe it's a little bit higher level even than the informal kitchen storytelling thing I mentioned. Maybe it's each board member does 3 outreach activities for the next year, and they make sure that 2 people from each of those activities does something similar, right? That could be an objective there within the next year. I think developing that elevator speech and or talking points, actually having both of those, right? The 30-second response, right? It just kind of, you're in the elevator, literally. And just talking points to help you when you do have those informal outreach groups, right? And you can give those, to your folks. And maybe even part of it is saying, hey, what, start it off like I did. What do you like about the library? How has the library made you so, what's been awesome for you about the library? And then it helps them create a talking point out of that as part of their outreach, right? Because you'll learn best by doing. At least that's true for me. And then the board orientation, you folks will want to pick out like 3 folks that want to work on that, 2 to 3 folks that want to work on that. You can, and then make sure that any materials that you want reviewed go through the board process. Don't circumvent that. And I will send you some information on, or some resources on both of these. And as far as the whole, look up grassroots organizing for ideas, right? Check out books here or online on grassroots organizing. That's kind of what you're doing with educating and advocacy, right? It's about neighbors, friends of neighbors, not all apart. And then, maybe expand that into larger community meetings. It's like, come and ask questions about the library and why we need to fund it. Right. Is there anything else I can help with at this point? Other than following up, which is going to be next week because I'm on vacation today.
Woohoo!
Good.
Thank you for your help.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been great. Thank you.
Good, good.
Mayor Clyde, do you have anything else to add?
Oh, I'm good.
Well set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here. I know it's not always fun attending remotely, so I appreciate your participation tonight.
All right,
We need to do anything else.
before we adjourn, we do need to approve the minute.
Okay.
And, actually, we don't have time for anything else, I don't think.
So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes
I'll
as
make a motion
presented?
as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Well, it's now 5:06. Thank you all, and thank you all, Darcy. Really appreciate this.
You folks are awesome.
Very eye-opening for all of us. I think we have a lot of homework to do. So, thank you guys very much. And we'll meet at our November meeting.
Yes, see you next month. Thank you, guys. Bye. And please take goodies home. Get some. Those are the two.